Chapter 5, The Birth of the Virgin Mary, August 26th, 1944. I see Anne coming out of the garden. She's leaning on the arm of a relative who looks very much like her. She's obviously several more months pregnant, and she looks tired, and her fatigue is not helped any by the humid weather, just as this present heat is exhausting me. Although the garden is shady, it's also very hot and close. The air is so heavy you could cut it like a soft, warm dough. The sun's rays descend from a merciless blue sky, and there's some dust in the air, making the atmosphere slightly dull. The weather must have been dry for a very long time now, because where there's no irrigation, the land is literally reduced to a very fine, almost white dust. Out in the open, this shade of white is slightly pink, whereas it's a dark red-brown under the trees where the soil is damp. Likewise, the ground is moist along the small flower beds, where rows of vegetables are growing, and around the rose bushes, the jasmines, and the other flowers, and particularly in front of and along the beautiful pergola, which divides the entire garden in two up to the beginning of the fields, which now are stripped of their crops. The grass of the meadow, which marks the boundary of their property, is parched and thin. Only at its border, where there is a hedge of wild hawthorn already completely studded with the rubies of its little fruits, is the grass greener and thicker. There are some sheep thereabout, with a young shepherd, seeking pasture and shade. Joachim is working around the rows of vines and olive trees. There are 2 men with him, helping him. Although an elderly man, he's quick, and he works eagerly. Together, they're opening little channels at the end of a field to bring water to the dry plants, and this water makes its way gurgling down between the grass and the dry land. The flow forms circles that for one moment resemble yellowish crystals, and seconds later are only rings of wet soil around the overloaded vine branches and the olive trees. Along the shady pergola, under which golden bees are buzzing, greedy for the sugar of the golden grapes, Anne moves slowly towards Joachim, who hastens towards her as soon as he sees her. "You came all the way out here? The house is hot as an oven, and you suffer from it. The only suffering of this last hour, the only suffering of this pregnant woman, is the natural suffering affecting everybody, man and beast. Don't get too warm, Joachim. The rain we've been hoping for such a long time, and that seems so close now these past 3 days. It hasn't come yet, and the country is parched. We're lucky, we're blessed to have a spring so near and so full of water. I've opened the channels. It's a measure of relief for the plants. Their leaves are withering and covered with dust. This water should be just enough to keep them alive, if it would only rain." Joachim, with the eagerness of all farmers, looks at the sky, while Anne, tired, cools herself with a fan that seems to be made from the dry leaf of a palm interwoven with many-colored threads to keep it firm. Anne's companion interrupts. "Over there, beyond the great Mount Hermon, fast clouds are arising, and there's a northern wind. That should bring refreshment, and perhaps rain. The breeze has risen for 3 days, and then it sets when the moon rises. Most likely it will do the same again. Joachim is discouraged. Let's go back home. Even out here, you can hardly breathe, and Joachim, I just think it's better that we go back, says Anne, who looks more olive-hued than usual, owing to a paleness that has come over her face. Are you in pain? No, but I can feel the same great peace that I experienced in the temple when I was granted our grace, and which I felt once again when I knew that I was pregnant. It's like an ecstasy, a sweet sleep in my body, while my soul rejoices and fills itself with a calm that has no bodily parallel. I've always loved you, and I still do, Joachim. And when I entered your house, and I said to myself, I am the wife of a just man, I had a great peace, and I felt the same every time your provident love took care of your dear Anne. But this peace is different. Understand, I think that the soul of our father Jacob was invaded by a similar peace, like the soothing given by oil that spreads and appeases after he dreamt of the angels. And maybe closer still, it's like the joyful peace of the Tobias after Raphael appeared to them. If I surrender myself to this feeling, it grows stronger and stronger as I enjoy it. It's as if I were ascending up into the blue vaults of the sky. And what's more, I don't know the reason for it, but ever since I've had this peaceful joy within me, I've had a song in my heart, old Tobiah's song. I think it was written for this very hour, for this our joy, for the land of Israel that receives it, for Jerusalem, sinful, yet forgiven. Oh, don't laugh at the frenzy of a new mother, but when I say, thank the Lord for your wealth, and bless the God of all the centuries, that he may rebuild his tabernacle within you, I think that he who will rebuild the tabernacle of the true God in Jerusalem will be this one who is about to be born. And I also think that the destiny of our baby was prophesied, and not the fate of the holy city, when the song goes on to say, you shall shine with a bright light. All the peoples of the world will prostrate themselves before you. The nations will come bringing their gifts. They will worship the Lord within you and will hold your land as sacred, because within you they will invoke the great name. You will be happy on account of your children, because they will all be blessed, and they will gather near the Lord. Blessed are those who love you, and blessed those who rejoice in your peace and prosperity. Oh, and Joachim, I am the first to rejoice, her happy mother. Anne changes color, saying these words, and she lights up like something brought from the paleness of the moonlight into the brightness of a great burning fire. Sweet tears, of which she is unaware, run down her cheeks, and she smiles in her joy. And in the meantime, she moves toward the house, walking between her husband and her relative, who both listen, and deeply moved, are silent. They make haste because clouds, driven by a strong wind, gather and rush across the sky, while the plain darkens and shudders at the warning of the coming storm. When they reach the threshold of the house, a first livid flash of lightning crosses the sky, and the rumble of the first peal of thunder sounds like the roll of a huge drum that mingles with the arpeggio of the first raindrops on the parched leaves. They all go in, and Anne withdraws, while Joachim, standing at the door, talks with the workers, who have joined him in the meantime. The conversation is about this longed-for rain, which is a blessing for the parched land. But their joy quickly turns into fear, because a very violent storm is approaching with lightning and clouds that threaten hail. If the cloud bursts, it'll crush the grapes and the olives like a millstone. Oh, poor me! Joachim is also anxious for his wife, whose time has come to give birth to her child. His relative assures him that Anne is not suffering at all. But still he's agitated, and every time his relative or any other woman, amongst whom is Alpheus's mother, comes out of Anne's room and goes back in again with hot water in basins and linens dried near the blazing fireplace in the large kitchen, he goes and makes inquiries. But he does not calm down despite their reassurances. Also, the lack of cries from Anne worries him. He says, "I'm a man, and I have never seen a child being born, but I remember hearing that the absence of throes is fatal." It's growing dark, and the sunset is preceded by a furious and very violent storm. It brings torrential rain, wind, lightning, everything except hail, which has fallen elsewhere. One of the workers notices the ferocity of the gale. "It looks as if Satan himself has come out of Gehenna with his demons. Look at those black clouds. You can smell sulfur in the air, and you can hear whistling and hisses and wailing and cursing voices. If it is him, he's furious this afternoon." The other worker laughs and scoffs. Some great prey must have escaped him, or maybe Michael struck him with a new thunderbolt from God, and he's had his horns and tail clipped and burnt. A woman passes by and shouts, "Joachim, the baby's coming, and it's happening quickly and well!" And she disappears with a small amphora in her hands. The storm drops suddenly after one last thunderbolt that's so violent it throws the three men against the side wall of the house, and in front of the porch in the garden, a black, smoky cavity remains as its memory. Meanwhile, a cry, one resembling the tiny plea of a little turtle dove that for the first time no longer peeps but coos, is heard from beyond Anne's door. And at the same time, a huge rainbow stretches its semicircle across the entire sky. It rises, or seems to rise, from the top of Mount Hermon, which, kissed by the sun, looks to be made of the most delicate pinkish alabaster. The rainbow rises up into the clear September sky, and through an atmosphere cleaned of all impurities, it crosses over the hills of Galilee and the plain to the south, and over another mountain, and seems to rest its far end on the distant horizon, where it drops from view behind a chain of high mountains. "Wow! We've never seen anything like this! Look, everyone! It seems to enclose in a circle the whole land of Israel. And look, there's already a star in the sky, even while the sun hasn't set yet. And what a star! It's shining like a huge diamond. And the moon over there, it's a full moon, 3 days early. And look how brightly she's shining." The women arrive jubilant, with a plump little baby wrapped in plain linens. It's Mary, the mother. A very tiny Mary who could sleep in the arms of a child. A Mary as long at most as an arm, with a little head of ivory dyed pale pink. Her tiny rosy lips no longer cry, but are set in the instinctive act of suckling. They're so small that one cannot understand how they'll be able to drink from a breast. Her pretty little nose is between two round tiny cheeks, and when they get her to open her eyes by teasing her, they see two small reflections of the sky, two innocent blue pools that look but cannot yet see, between thin, fair eyelashes. Her hair on her little round head is also fair, a beautiful pinkish blonde, like the color of certain honeys that are almost white. Her ears are two small shells, transparent, perfect. Her tiny hands, what are those two little things groping in the air and ending up in her mouth? Closed as they are now, they're two tiny rosebuds that split the green of their sepals and show their silky petals within. When her hands are open, as now, they're two perfect jewels, made of pink ivory and alabaster, with 5 pale garnets as nails. How will those two tiny hands ever be able to dry so many tears? And her little feet, what are they? For the time being, they're just kicking, hidden in the linens. But now, the relative sits down and uncovers her. Oh, her tiny little feet! They're about 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches long. Each sole is a coral shell with a snow-white top veined in blue. Her toes are masterpieces of Lilliputian sculpture. They too are crowned with small scales of pale garnet. But where will they ever find sandals when those little doll's feet take their first steps small enough to fit such tiny feet? And how will those little feet be able to journey such a long way and bear so much pain at the foot of the cross? But that, for the time being, is not yet known. And the onlookers smile and laugh at her kicking, at her well-shaped legs, at her minute plump thighs that are dimpled and ringed, at her little tummy, a cup turned upside down, at her tiny, perfect chest. Under the skin of her breast, softer than the finest silk, the movement of her breathing can be seen, and you can feel and hear the beating of her little heart, if, as her happy father is now doing, you lay your lips there for a kiss. This is the most beautiful little heart that the world will ever know, the only immaculate heart of a mere human being. And her back. Now they're turning her over, and they can see the curve of her kidneys and her plump shoulders and the pink nape of her neck, which is so strong that the little head lifts itself up on the arch of the delicate vertebrae. It looks like the head of a little bird scanning the new world within its view. She, the pure and chaste one, protests with a little cry at being thus exposed to the eyes of so many. She, entirely virgin, the holy and immaculate one, whom no man will ever see nude again, protests. Do cover this bud of a lily, which will never be opened on earth, and which, still remaining a bud, will bear its divine flower, even more beautiful than herself. Only in heaven will this lily of the triune Lord open all of its petals, because up there is not even the tiniest speck of sin that could unwillingly profane her spotlessness, because up there the triune God is to be received in the presence of the whole Empyrean, this very triune God who within a few years, hidden in her faultless heart, will be within her, Father, Son, Spouse. Here she is again in her linens, in the arms of her earthly father, whom she resembles. Not at the moment. Now she is just a tiny baby. I mean that she will look like him when she's grown into a woman. She has nothing of her mother. She has her father's complexion and eye color, and certainly also his hair. His hair is now white, but when he was young, it was certainly fair, as one can tell from his eyebrows. She has her father's features, made more perfect and gentle, being a woman, this very special woman. She also has the smile, the glance, the way of moving and the height, or rather lack of height, of her father. The women also now are speaking of the storm and the unusual state of the moon, of the presence of the star and of the rainbow. Along with Joachim, they enter the happy mother's room and give her her baby. Anne smiles at one of her thoughts. She is the star, she says. Her sign is even now in the heavens. Mary, bridge of peace. Mary, my star. Mary, pure moon. Mary, our precious pearl. Are you naming her Mary? Yes, Mary, star of the sea, pearl, light, and peace. But it also means bitterness. Aren't you afraid of bringing her misfortune? Oh, no. God is with her. She belonged to him even before she existed. He will lead her along his ways, and all bitterness will turn into heavenly honey. Now come to your mummy and be mine for a little longer before I give you completely to him. And the vision ends on the first sleep of Anne, a mother with Mary, her tiny infant. August 27th, 1944. Jesus says, "Rise and make haste, my little friend. I'm longing to take you with me on the heavenly contemplation of Mary's virginity. You will emerge from this experience with your soul as fresh as if you too were created anew this very moment by the Father, a little Eve not yet aware of the flesh. You will emerge with your soul filled with light because you will plunge into God's masterpiece. You will emerge with your whole being saturated in love because you will have understood the degree to which God can love. To speak of the conception of Mary, the Immaculate, means to penetrate sky, light, love. Come and read her glories in the book of the Ancestor. God possessed me at the beginning of his works, from the beginning, before the creation. From everlasting I was firmly set in the beginning, before the earth came into being. The deep did not yet exist, and already I was envisioned. The springs did not yet gush with water, and the mountains had not yet risen in their huge masses, neither were the hills jewels in the sun, when my birth already was foreseen. God had not yet made the earth, the rivers, and the foundation of the world, yet already I was with him. When he prepared the heavens, I was present in his mind. When with immutable laws he enclosed the deep under the surface, when he fixed the heavens firm and he suspended there the springs of waters, when he assigned the sea its boundaries and gave laws to the waters, when he ordered the waters not to invade the shore, when he laid down the foundations of the earth, I was with him as he was arranging everything. Always playing joyfully in his presence, I played in the universe. You applied these words to wisdom, but they speak also of her, the beautiful mother, the holy mother, the virgin mother of wisdom, the wisdom that I am, I who am now speaking to you. I wanted you to write the first line of this song at the beginning of the chapters that speak of her, that she might be contemplated, and that the consolation and joy of God might be made known. The reason for the constant, perfect, intimate delight of this God, one and triune, who rules and loves you, and who received from man so many reasons to be sad. The reason why he perpetuated the human race, even when at the very first test humanity deserved to be destroyed. The reason for the forgiveness you have received. To have Mary, who loved him. Oh, it was well worthwhile to create man, allowing him to exist and decreeing to forgive him in order to have the beautiful Virgin, the Holy Virgin, the Immaculate Virgin, the loving Virgin, the beloved daughter, the most pure mother, the loving spouse. God has given you so much, and he would have given you even more, just to possess this creature of his delight, the sun to his moon, the flower of his garden. And he continues to give you so much on account of her, at her request, for her joy, because her joy flows into the joy of God and adorns it with flashes that accent its light, the great light of paradise with brilliant sparkles, and every sparkle is a grace to the universe, to mankind, to the blessed souls who reply with a jubilant cry of Alleluia in each generation of divine miracle, created by the desire of the Blessed Trinity to see the dazzling smile of joy on the face of the Virgin. God desired to put a king in his universe, the universe that he had created out of nothing, a king who by the nature of matter should be the first amongst all the creatures created with matter and endowed with matter, a king who by nature of the Spirit should be united with the divine, united to grace, as he was in his first innocent day. But the Supreme Mind, to whom all the most remote events in centuries are known, incessantly sees what was, is, and is yet to be. And while God contemplates the past and observes the present, he penetrates deeply with his foresight into the most distant future, and knows in every detail how the very last man will die. Without confusion or discontinuity, the Supreme Mind has always known that the King created and destined to be exalted to his side in heaven, heir of the Father, would arrive adult in his kingdom, after living in the house of his mother on earth, being crafted bodily from his mother, the earth, yet remaining during his time on earth ever the child of his eternal Father. The Supreme Mind has always known that man would commit against himself the crime of killing grace in himself, and thus by this theft rob himself of heaven. But then why did God create man? Certainly, many ask themselves this very question. But consider, would you prefer not to exist? Does this day not deserve in itself to be lived, although so poor and bare, and rendered harsh by your wickedness, so that you may know and admire the infinite beauty that the hand of God has sown in the universe? For whom would God have created the stars and planets that fly like thunderbolts and arrows, furrowing the vault of heaven, or dashing majestically in their rush of meteors, and yet seem so slow, presenting you with light and seasons, eternally immutable, and yet always changing? They give you a new page to read on the sky every evening, every month, every year, as if they wish to say, "Rise, rise above your restrictions. Forsake your imprisoning world, which is full of obscure, putrid, dirty, poisonous, false, misleading, corrupting matter, and rise, at least with your eyes, to the unlimited freedom of the firmament. Make your souls bright by looking at so clear a sky. Store up a supply of light to take to your dark prison. Read the word that we write as we sing in chorus our sidereal songs, which are more harmonious than the ones drawn from cathedral organs. Our hymns are the word that we write while singing, the word that we write while loving, because we always bear in mind him who gave us the joy of existing. And we love him for giving us our existence, our brightness, our movement, our freedom, our beauty in the midst of the gentle azure skies, beyond which we can see the even more sublime blue of paradise. And we fulfill the second part of his commandment of love by loving you, our universal neighbors. And we show our love for you by giving you guidance and light, warmth and beauty. Read the word we say, the one on which we improvise our singing, our brightness, our smile. That word is God. For whom did he make the blue sea, the mirror of the sky, the way to the land, the laughter of waters, the voice of waves? The sea itself is a word that with the rustling of silk, with the smiles of happy girls, with the sighs of old people who remember and weep, with the clamor of violence, with clashes and roars, always speaks and proclaims, God. The sea is for you, as the sky and the stars are, and with the sea the lakes and the rivers, the ponds and the springs, the pure streams, all of which serve to nourish you, to quench your thirst, to clean you. And they do serve you in obedience to their Creator, without submerging you, as you deserve. For whom did God make the countless families of animals, the beautifully colored birds that fly and sing, and the beasts that like servants run, work, pull, nourish, and support you, their kings? For whom did he create the countless families of plants and flowers that look like butterflies, like gems and motionless birds, and the families of fruits that are like jewels or treasure chests? They are carpet for your feet, and the trees that form shelters for your heads and shade from the heat. Are they not a welcome relaxation and joy to your minds, your limbs, your sight, and your smell? For whom did God make the minerals in the depths of the earth, and the salts dissolved in cold and boiling springs, the iodines and the bromines, if not for you, you who should enjoy them? You who are not God, but the children of God, men and women created in his own image and likeness. The joy of God lacked nothing. God has no need. He is sufficient in himself. He has only to contemplate himself to rejoice, to sustain his being, to live, to rest. The whole of creation has not increased by one atom his infinite, everlasting joy, beauty, life, power. He made everything for the creature that he wanted to place as king over the work of his hands. And that creature is you, mankind. It is worthwhile to live, that you may witness such a work of God and be grateful to his power that gives you such an opportunity. You must be grateful to be alive. You should have been grateful even if you had had to wait until doomsday itself to be redeemed, because you have been liars, proud, lusting, murderous rebels in your first parents, and you are still so individually. Yet God allows you to enjoy the beauty of his universe, the goodness of his universe. And he treats you as if you were good children who are taught and granted everything so that their lives might be happier and more pleasant. What you know by the light of God. What you discover through the guidance of God in goodness. Other knowledge, other discoveries that bear the mark of evil, these come from the supreme evil, Satan. The divine mind that knows everything, even before man existed, of course knew that man would become a thief and a self-murderer. And as the eternal goodness has no limits in being good, before guilt even existed, God had already decided upon the means of obliterating guilt and restoring to man all that man would forfeit through sin. And what were the destined means? I, myself, the Word made flesh. But what in heaven or on earth could be a suitable instrument to prepare this means and render it an efficient tool? Who could God entrust with the critical, crucial duty of enacting this means, of giving flesh to me, the Word? Mary. And thus, the virgin was created in the sublime mind of God. Everything was created for me, beloved Son of the Father. I, the true King, should have had under my divine royal feet carpets and jewels, such as no royal palace has ever or could ever boast, and songs and voices and servants and ministers around me, as no sovereign had ever or would ever possess, and flowers and gems, all that was sublime, all that could be conceived of and derived from the greatness and the kindness of the all-knowing mind of God. But I was to be flesh as well as spirit. Flesh to save the flesh, flesh to heal and restore and exalt and sanctify and deify the flesh, taking it to heaven many centuries before its time. Because my flesh, my body, inhabited by the Spirit, is God's masterpiece, and heaven had already been made and prepared to receive it. But in order to become flesh, I needed a mother. To be God, God from God and light from light, it was necessary that my Father be God the Father. So then, God created his spouse and said to her, "Come with me. At my side, see what I am doing for our son. Look and rejoice, ever virgin, perfect maiden, and may your smile fill this empyrean and give the angels their starting note and teach paradise its celestial harmony. I am thinking of you. And I see you as you shall be, O immaculate woman, you who now are only an idea, the dream in which I rejoice. I am looking at you, and I give the sea and the firmament the blue of your eyes. The life-sustaining wheat, I give the color of your hair, whiteness to the lily, and a blush to the rose, from the hues of your silky skin. I copy the pearls from your perfect tiny teeth. I make the sweet strawberries an imitation of your mouth, and I give the nightingale the notes of your songs, and the turtle doves the tones of your cries. Yes, by reading your future thoughts and listening to the throbs of your heart, I have a motive to guide, propel, and direct my work of creation. Come, my joy! Have all the worlds as a plaything, so long as you yourself will be the dancing light of my thoughts. Have the worlds for your smile. Have wreaths and necklaces and crowns of stars. Place the moon under your gentle feet. Make of the Milky Way your celestial scarf. The stars and planets are for you. Come and enjoy looking at the flowers that will be a childish joy for your baby and a pillow for the son of your womb. Come and see sheep and lambs, eagles and doves being created. Stay beside me when I make the hollows of the seas and the grooves of the rivers, as I raise the mountains and adorn them with snow and forests. Stay here while I sow herbs and trees and vines. I make the olive tree for you, my peaceful one, and the vine for you, my vine branch, who will bear the Eucharistic bunch of grapes. Run, fly, rejoice, my beauty, and may the universe, which is created hour by hour, learn from you how to love me, my love, and may it become more beautiful owing to your smile, mother of my son, queen of my paradise, beloved of your God. And again, considering the fault and admiring the faultless one, God spoke, "Come to me, you who wipe out the bitterness of human disobedience, of human fornication with Satan, and of human ingratitude. Through you, I will take my revenge on Satan." In the beginning, God the Father Creator had fashioned man and woman with a law of love so perfect that now, after the fall, you are no longer capable of fully comprehending its perfection, and you become lost in wondering how the human species would have progressed if man had not been taught by Satan how to sin. Look at the fruit and seed plants. Do they produce seed and fruit by means of fornication? By means of one fertilization out of 100 pollinations? No. The pollen emerges from the male flower, and driven by complex atmospheric and magnetic laws, it proceeds to the ovary of the female flower. The latter opens, receives it, and produces. It does not pollute itself and then refuse the fruit as you do to enjoy the same sensation the following day. It produces, and until the new season, it is not again repollinated, and when it is pollinated only to produce. Look at the animals, all of them. Have you ever seen a male animal and a female one approach each other for a sterile embrace or for lustful dealings? No. From far or near they crawl, fly, jump, or run. They go, when it is time, to the rite of reproduction. Neither do they evade the rite's purpose and goal, stopping at the pleasure. No, they go on to its completion, to the serious and holy consequences of the offspring, the true reason that should impel man and woman, demigods by your origin of grace, which I had made complete, to accept the animality of the act, necessary since you descended by a degree toward the animals. But you do not act as plants and animals do. You had as your teacher Satan. You wanted him, and you want him still. And the works you do are what one would expect from the teacher that you have chosen. Had you been faithful to God, you would have had the joy of children in a holy way, without pain, without exhausting yourselves in obscene and shameful intercourses, which even beasts are unacquainted with, although beasts are without a reasoning and spiritual soul. To man and woman corrupted by Satan, God chose to oppose the man born of a woman, the woman whom God had exalted through grace, the woman God had filled with grace, to such an extent that she generated without knowing a man, a flower that produces a flower without the need of seed, by a unique kiss of the sun on the inviolate chalice of the lily. Mary, Mary, the revenge of God. Hiss, O Satan, hiss your hatred as she comes into the world. This child has beaten you. Before, you were the rebel, the perverter, the corrupter, the thief, the liar, the murderer. Yet you were already beaten, and she was your conqueror. True, 1,000 assembled armies are of no avail against your power. The weapons of men fall before your scales, O perennial one, and there is no wind capable of dispersing the stench of your breath. And yet, the heel of this child, which is so rosy as to look like the inside of a freshly bloomed magnolia, and is so smooth and soft that silk seems coarse in comparison, and is so small that it could enter the chalice of a tulip and make itself a tiny shoe with that living flowery satin, this very heel is crushing your head without any fear and sending you back defeated to cower in your den. Her very cry causes you to flee away, although you are not afraid of armies, and her breath purifies the world of your foul smell. You are defeated. Her name, her glance, her purity are a sword, lance, a thunderbolt that pierces you and demolishes you and imprisons you in your cage of hell. O cursed one, you who deprived God of the joy of being the father of all the men he created. In vain you have corrupted them, those who had been created innocent, leading them to empty knowledge and profane conception by means of the sensuousness of lust, depriving God in his beloved creature of being the benefactor of the children according to rules, which, had they been respected, would have kept a balance upon the earth between sexes and races, a balance capable of averting wars between peoples and calamities between families. By obeying, mankind would have also known love. Indeed, only by obeying they would have known love and possessed it, a complete and peaceful possession of this gift from God, who from the supernatural descends to the simply natural, so that mere flesh may also rejoice devoutly, since it is united to the Spirit and created by him who created the Spirit. Now, men, what is your love? What are your loves? Either lewdness disguised as love, or an incurable fear of losing the love of your partner through her or other people's lewdness. You have never been sure of possessing the heart of your husband or wife ever since lust entered the world, and you tremble and cry and become overwrought with jealousy. Sometimes you kill to avenge a betrayal. Sometimes you despair, and sometimes you lose all motivation and willpower, or even become insane. This is what you have done, Satan, to the children of God. Those whom you have corrupted would have known the joy of having children without suffering any pain, and would have experienced the joy of being born without fear of dying. But now you are beaten in a woman and by a woman. From now on, whoever loves her will become once again God's own child, overcoming all of your temptations, and will be empowered through grace to be able to look at and contemplate, and above all, imitate her immaculate purity. From now on, mothers, though not able to conceive and deliver without pain, will find their comfort in her. From now on, she will be the guide of married women and the mother of dying people, so that it will be sweet to die, resting upon that breast, cradled over that immaculate heart, which is a shield against you, you cursed one, and against the wrath of a just God. Oh, my friend, Maria Valtorta, my little voice, and all of you, hear and receive and accept and live my words through her writings. You have seen the birth of the Virgin's Son and the assumption of the Virgin into heaven. You have therefore seen that the faultless, sinless ones are unacquainted with the pain of giving birth, as well as the pain of dying. And indeed, if the most innocent Mother of God was granted the perfection of these celestial gifts, all those who in the first parents had remained innocent children of God would have generated without throes of agony, as justice decreed, having conceived without lust, and they would have died without anxiety. Know now that the sublime victory of God over Satan's rebellion was to raise up and magnify the perfection of this beloved creature, mankind, to a super perfection that could annul, at least in one person, all the guilt accumulated by the remainder of humanity, by all those susceptible to Satan's poison, so that the Son, God's own Son, could be generated, not by a man's chaste embrace, but by a divine embrace that caused the Spirit to change color in the ecstasy of its fire, the Virgin's virginity. Come, contemplate this deep virginity, this true virginity, and enjoy the ecstatic and pure inebriation that comes from its contemplation. What is the pitiable, enforced virginity of a woman that no man has married? A bud that has not yet blossomed and bloomed. And what is the virginity of a woman who wanted to be a virgin in order that she might belong solely and completely to God, but is so only in her body and not in her spirit, where she allows alien thoughts to enter and where she entertains the allurements of human temptations? This is a sham virginity, a bud that has withered on the branch. It is very little and produces little fruit. And what is the virginity of a cloistered nun who lives only for God in her flesh and in her heart and mind and soul? Very much. But even this does not begin to compare with the perfect virginity preserved and cultivated by my mother. There has always been a connection, a bond, even in the best of Adam's children, between spirit and guilt. The association of original sin, the stain, the chain that only baptism removes and dissolves. Yes, baptism dissolves it. But as in the case of a woman disassociated from her husband by his death, even baptism does not render virginity complete and whole and pristine, such as it was in the first parents before sin. A scar remains, and pain endures, and this ache draws attention to itself, causing you to remember it, and it is always ready to become an open sore, like certain diseases that periodically flare up and become worse due to an underlying virus that remains embedded, hidden and unseen beneath the surface. But in the virgin, there is no sign of this dissolved association with the fault. Her soul appears ever beautiful, all beautiful, and completely intact, perfectly preserved and untouched since the moment the Father conceived her, gathering all of his graces within her. She is the virgin. She is the only one. She is the perfect one, the complete one, conceived as such, generated as such, remaining such, crowned such, eternally such. She is the Virgin. She is the epitome, the summit of holiness, of purity, of grace that is continually absorbed in the divine, infinite source from which it emerged, God Himself, who is most perfect holiness, purity, grace. This is the revenge of God, one and triune. In response to creatures desecrated by sin, He raises this star to perfection. Against pernicious, rebellious, deadly curiosity, He raises this humble, simple virgin, fully content with loving God alone. Against the empty knowledge of evil, this sublime and innocent virgin. In her, not only is there ignorance of fallen, dejected, lust-filled love, not only is there a total unfamiliarity with the love that God has given to married people, but much more. In Mary, there is an absence of temptations, the inheritance of sin. In her, there is the icy and white-hot wisdom of divine love, a fire that strengthens the flesh with ice so that it may be a transparent mirror at the altar, the divine altar where God marries this virgin and does not lower Himself in doing so, because His perfection embraces her perfection, which, as she becomes a bride, is only inferior to His by the smallest degree. She is subject to Him as a woman, as the body is subject to its head, but like Him, she is without even the smallest fault. Whew. Brothers and sisters, that was a lot. And if you are still watching and you have made it that far, pat yourselves on the back and know that it's a very good sign you are on the right track. You are continuing your journey to God's holy kingdom of light. And if you have questions, which I suspect you do because I do not be afraid to send those questions to me at askabbababa@gmail.com. And I will do my best. Maybe we can have some commentary videos on here, and we can start a conversation and a discussion, and we can search for some answers together. Until then, many thanks for your support and for watching, and may the God who created Mary as the promise of everything that he wants to do in you and for you, may this good God bring to completion all of the good work he's begun in you. And may his blessings be yours now and forever. Until next time, go in peace. And I look forward to joining you again soon as we continue on to chapter 6. Anne and Joachim present their child to God in the temple.